Finding the ultimate theory of everything between general relativity and quantum field theory is one of the major unsolved problems in physics today. But why should we even presuppose there should be a unification into a theory of everything between quantum theory and general relativity in the first place? Such a presupposition certainly doesn't follow from the math. Gödel's incompleteness theorem itself has now proven that there will never be a purely mathematical theory of everything. Stephen Hawking himself admitted that Gödel's incompleteness theorem proves that there are limits to what can be ascertained by mathematics. Kurt Gödel halted the achievement of a unifying, all-encompassing theory of everything in his theorem. As Stanley Jockey put it, due to Gödel's incompleteness theorem, all mathematical models, all theories of elementary particles, including the theory of quarks and gluons, fall inherently short of being that theory which shows in virtue of its a priori truth that the world can only be what it is and nothing else. This is true even if the theory happened to account for perfect accuracy for all phenomena of the physical world known at a particular time. Moreover, according to work done by leading mathematician Gregory Chaitin extending Gödel's incompleteness theorem, we now know that what Gödel discovered was just the tip of the iceberg. An infinite number of true mathematical theorems exist that cannot be proved by any finite system of axioms. In fact, both general relativity and quantum mechanics are built on very different mathematical frameworks. Thus, the presupposition that there should even be a purely mathematical theory of everything certainly doesn't follow from the mathematics itself. So where does this supposedly unquestionable presupposition come from? Well, I hate to break it to dogmatic atheists, but the presupposition that there should be a single overarching mathematical theory of everything is a belief that is born solely out of theistic presuppositions. As Professor Steve Fuller puts it, it would be perfectly easy to stop the pursuit of science at much lower levels. Understand a certain range of phenomena in a way that is appropriate to deal with that phenomena and just stop there and not go any deeper or any farther. You see, there is a sense in which there is design at the ultimate level, the ultimate teleology, you might say, which provides the ultimate closure. Mathematician John D. Barrow agrees with this overall line of thought from Professor Fuller and states, "Our monotheistic traditions reinforce the assumption that the universe is at root a unity that is not governed by different legislation in different places." Atheists simply have no coherent reason for presupposing that there should even be one unifying rational form of all things, or a theory of everything. According to atheistic presuppositions, why shouldn't the world be chaotic, utterly random, meaningless? Even Einstein himself stated, "You find it strange that I consider the comprehensibility of the world as a miracle or as an eternal mystery." Well, a priori, one should expect a chaotic world which cannot be grasped by the mind in any way. And he further stated that there lies the weakness of positivists and professional atheists. To further drive the point home that the presupposition that there should even be a single overarching theory of everything is a thoroughly theistic presupposition, it is good to look at what is considered the first major unification in physics. The first major unification in physics was Sir Isaac Newton's realization that the same force that caused an apple to fall at the Earth's surface, gravity, was also responsible for holding the moon in orbit about the Earth. In regards to this first unification, Sir Isaac Newton stated, "The most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. And if the fixed stars are the centers of others like systems, these being formed by the likewise counsel, must be all subject to the dominion of one." The second major unification in physics was when James Clerk Maxwell demonstrated that electricity and magnetism were different manifestations of a single underlying electromagnetic force. And although James Clerk Maxwell, due to the conjectural nature of many theories in science, was extremely hesitant to fasten any particular scientific hypothesis to the text of the Bible, and to Genesis in particular, Maxwell nonetheless did state the following shortly after his unification of electricity and magnetism. "At the same time, I think that each individual man should do all he can to impress his own mind with the extent, the order, and the unity of the universe, and should carry these ideas with him as he reads such passages as the first chapter of the Epistle to Colossians." Thus, much to the consternation of dogmatic atheists, insofar that anyone believes there should be just one overarching and unifying mathematical theory of everything for why the universe is the way it is, that person, whether he is aware of it or not, is holding on to a thoroughly theistic presupposition about how the universe should operate. Since Maxwell's unification of magnetism and electricity, further attempts at unifying particles and forces have met, as the following article states, with mixed success. And, as was mentioned previously, the greatest challenge that is left in physics today is the unification of quantum field theory with general relativity. As the following article states, the first attempt at unifying relativity and quantum mechanics took place when special relativity was merged with electromagnetism. This created the theory of quantum electrodynamics, or QED. It is an example of what has become to be known as relativistic quantum field theory, or just quantum field theory. QED is considered by most physicists to be the most precise theory of natural phenomena ever developed. Richard Feynman and others were only able to unify special relativity with quantum mechanics into quantum electrodynamics by quote-unquote brushing infinity under the rug with a technique called renormalization. And whereas special relativity, by brushing infinity under the rug, has been successfully unified with quantum theory to produce quantum electrodynamics, no such mathematical sleight of hand exist for unifying general relativity with quantum mechanics. General relativity, as the following articles show, simply refuses to be mathematically unified with quantum mechanics in any acceptable way. In technical terms, gravity has yet to be successfully included into a theory of everything, since the infinities that crop up in that attempt are not renormalizable as they were in quantum electrodynamics. The irreconcilable infinity problem between quantum mechanics and general relativity is dealt with in more detail in this following video. And as was also touched upon in the reference video, I believe that the reconciliation of quantum mechanics and general relativity into the much sought after theory of everything was accomplished in Jesus Christ's resurrection from the dead. But before we get into the specifics of that claim, it is first important to realize that a person would be well justified in asking just how is it even possible in this universe for a human being on a supposedly insignificant planet to unify our best scientific descriptions of the universe, quantum mechanics and general relativity, into quote-unquote the theory of everything. Even if that human being happens to be Jesus Christ himself, the question of scientific plausibility of the endeavor would still persist in the minds of many people, especially if that person happened to be a non-Christian. As Einstein himself once said, "I want to know how God created this world." And in answering this question of the plausibility of the endeavor, there are two important issues that first need to be addressed. Those two important issues are the issue of the Copernican principle and also the issue of agent causality versus mechanical causality. First off, contrary to the popularly held belief that the Copernican principle has rendered any belief in the special status in this universe for the Earth and for humanity in particular null and void, contrary to that popular belief, the fact of the matter is that both general relativity and quantum mechanics have themselves now overturned the Copernican principle and or the principle of mediocrity as being a valid principle in science. Particularly, in the four-dimensional space-time of Einstein's general relativity, we find that each three-dimensional point in the universe is central to the expansion of the universe. And since any three-dimensional point can be considered central in the four-dimensional space-time of general relativity, then, as the following article makes clear, it is now left completely open to whomever is making a model of the universe to decide for themselves what is to be considered central in the universe. Einstein himself stated the two sentences, "The sun is at rest and the earth moves," or "the sun moves and the earth is at rest," would simply mean two different conventions concerning two different coordinate systems. And Fred Hoyle and George Ellis add their considerable weight against the Copernican principle here in these following two quotes. As Einstein himself noted, there is simply no test that can be performed that can prove that the Earth is not the center of the universe. And here are a few more references that drives this point home. Even Stephen Hawking himself, who once claimed that we are just chemical scum on an insignificant planet, stated that it is not true that Copernicus proved totally wrong. The real advantage of the Copernican system is simply that the equations of motion are much simpler in the frame of reference in which the sun is at rest. Even individual people, as the following article makes clear, can be considered to be central in the universe according to the four-dimensional space-time of general relativity. In fact, when Einstein first formulated both special relativity and general relativity, he gave a hypothetical observer a privileged frame of reference in which to make measurements in the universe. Whereas, on the other hand, in quantum mechanics, it is the measurement itself that gives each observer a privileged frame of reference in the universe. As the following article states, it proves that measurement is everything. At the quantum level, reality does not exist if you are not looking at it. Richard Conn Henry, who is professor of physics at Johns Hopkins University, stated, "It is more than 80 years since the discovery of quantum mechanics gave us the most fundamental insight ever into our nature, the overturning of the Copernican revolution, and the restoration of us human beings to centrality in the universe." Thus, contrary to popular belief, humans are not nearly as insignificant in this universe as many people, including many Christians, have been falsely led to believe by the Copernican principle. The following video touches on many more evidences that firmly establish the fact that man is not nearly as insignificant in this universe as is commonly believed. The second important issue that needs to be touched upon in clarifying the plausibility of Jesus Christ unifying quantum mechanics and general relativity into the quote-unquote theory of everything is the issue of agent causality versus mechanical causality. First off, atheists employ what is termed methodological naturalism to try to rule agent causality out of bounds before any scientific investigation has even begun. As Paul Nelson states in the following article, epistemology, how we know, and ontology, what exists, are both affected by methodological naturalism. If we say we cannot know that a mind caused X, laying down an epistemological boundary defined by methodological naturalism, then our ontology comprising real causes for X won't include minds. Yet, this denial of agent causality, as imposed by the artificial imposition of methodological naturalism onto science, is completely unwarranted. If anything, we understand agent causality much better than we understand mechanical causality. As Professor J. Budziski states in the following article, there are two great holes in the argument about the irrelevance of God. The first, that is, in order to attack free will, I supposed that I understood cause and effect. I supposed causation to be less mysterious than volition. If anything, it is the other way around. I can perceive a logical connection between premises and valid conclusions. I can perceive at least a rational connection between my willing to do something and my doing it. But between the apple and the earth, I can perceive no connection at all. Why does the apple fall? We don't know. But there is gravity, you say. No, gravity is merely the name of the phenomenon. It's not its explanation. But there are the laws of gravity, you say. No, the laws are not its explanation either. They are merely a more precise description of the thing to be explained, which remains as mysterious as before. For just this reason, philosophers of science are shy to term the laws. They prefer law-like regularities. To call the equations of gravity laws and to speak of the apple as obeying them is to speak as though, like the traffic laws, the laws of gravity are addressed to rational agents capable of conforming their wills to the command. This is cheating, because it makes mechanical causality, the more opaque of the two phenomena, seem like volition, the less. In my own way of thinking, the cheating was even graver, because I attacked the less opaque in the name of the more. It is also important to note the catastrophic failure in epistemology that is inherent in the atheist denial of agent causality. Specifically, in the atheist denial of their own free will, they forsake any right to the claim they are making a logically coherent argument in the first place, as Martin Cawthron states in the following article. By their own logic, it isn't logic that demands their assent to the claim that free will is an illusion, but the prior chemical state of their brains. The only condition under which we could possibly find their argument convincing is if they are not true. The claim that free will is an illusion requires the possibility that minds have the freedom to assent to a logical argument, a freedom denied by the claim itself. It is an assent that must, in order to remain logical and not physiological, presume a perspective outside the physical order. Simply put, rationality implies a thinker in control of thoughts. 2. Under materialism, a thinker is an effect caused by the processes in the brain. Determinism. 3. In order for materialism to ground rationality, a thinker, an effect, must control processes in the brain, a cause. 1 and 2. Yet 4. Yet no effect can control its cause. Therefore, materialism cannot ground rationality. Moreover, as the following article highlights, even many leading atheists themselves admit that it is impossible for them to live as if they had no free will. Even Richard Dawkins himself admitted that it would be quote-unquote intolerable for him to live his life as if determinism were true and that he had no free will. And what should be needless to say, if it is impossible for you to live as if your worldview were actually true, then your worldview cannot possibly reflect reality as it really is. But your worldview must instead be based on a delusion. And here is a video that goes over several more lines of evidence that further establish the reality of free will. And although their denial of free will is more than enough to prove that the atheist materialistic worldview is completely incoherent as a rational worldview, things get much, much worse for the atheist in their denial of the reality of their own immaterial mind. And what I consider to be a shining example of poetic justice In their claim that God does not really exist as a real person, but is merely an illusion, the atheist ends up claiming that he himself does not really exist as a real person, but is merely a quote-unquote neuronal illusion. Here are a few quotes that make this point clear. It is also important to note that although atheists claim that consciousness is merely a neuronal illusion, the fact of the matter, as these following quotes make clear, is that they have no clue, much less experimental evidence, how anything material could ever achieve consciousness. This sheer inability of materialists to ever be able to explain how something material can possibly become conscious is referred to as the hard problem of consciousness. In the following video, David Connors is excellent in clearly explaining the hard problem of consciousness. Moreover, not only do we ourselves become quote-unquote neuronal illusions in the atheist materialistic worldview, but all our observations of reality would also become illusory too. In the following video and articles, Donald Hoffman has, through numerous computer simulations of population genetics, proven that if Darwinian evolution were actually true, then all of our perceptions of reality would become illusory. And although Donald Hoffman tried to limit his results to just our visual perceptions, as Alvin Plantinga had pointed out years before Hoffman came along, there's no reason why the results of Darwinian evolution do not also extend to undermining the reliability of our cognitive faculties as well. Thus, in what should be needless to say, a worldview that undermines the scientific method itself by holding all our observations of reality and cognitive faculties are illusory is not a worldview that can ever be firmly grounded within the scientific method. Moreover, completely contrary to what Hoffman found for Darwinian theory, it turns out that accurate perception or conscious observation, far from being unreliable and illusory, is experimentally found to be far more integral to reality, far more reliable of reality than the mathematics of population genetics predicted. In fact, in the following experiment, it was found that reality doesn't exist without an observer. Apparently, science itself could care less if atheists are forced to believe, because of the mathematics of population genetics, that their observations of reality are illusory. Thus, in conclusion, in their denial of the reality of their own immaterial minds, atheists end up claiming that they themselves are deterministic robots who are merely neuronal illusions and whose observations of reality are illusory. And my question is this: why in blue blazes should anyone trust what robots having neuronal illusions of personhood and whose perceptions of reality are illusory and whose cognitive faculties are untrustworthy have to say about reality? It would be hard to fathom a more unscientific worldview than the atheist materialistic worldview has turned out to be. The complete loss of any coherent anchor for reality itself in their materialistic worldview is fittingly reflected in Edgar Allan Poe's poem, A Dream Within a Dream. Moreover, besides the catastrophic epistemological failure that is inherent to the atheist worldview, which excludes immaterial minds from the outset before any scientific investigation has even begun, as the following video makes clear, advances in quantum mechanics have now shown us that the mental attribute of free will and also the mental attribute of what is termed the experience of the now are both integral parts of quantum mechanics. That is to say that key and defining attributes of the immaterial mind are now found to be central to our best scientific understanding of reality and quantum mechanics. In fact, as the following article by Steven Weinberg shows, in quantum mechanics, humans are brought into the laws of physics at the most fundamental level, instead of humans being the result of the laws of physics as Darwinists falsely imagined us to be. And as Anton Zeilinger states at the 7-minute mark of the following video, we know that it is wrong to assume that the features of a system which we observe in a measurement exist prior to measurement. What we perceive as reality now depends on our earlier decision what to measure, which is a very, very deep message about the nature of reality and our part in the whole universe. We are not just passive observers. Thus, contrary to the claim by atheists that immaterial minds are unscientific and only mechanical causality can be allowed in science, it is now found that agent causality is very much an integral part of quantum mechanics itself. Thus, with the fact that humans are now found to have far more significance in this universe, with the overturning of the Copernican principle by both general relativity and quantum mechanics, and with the establishing of agent causality as being far more rational, as well as being found to be integral to quantum mechanics itself, then the possibility of Christ reconciling both general relativity and quantum mechanics into the much sought after theory of everything becomes far more plausible scientifically. Now to pick back up where I left off on the infinity problem between general relativity and quantum mechanics, which I had previously touched upon in this video. Of related interest to the irreconcilable infinity problem between quantum mechanics and general relativity, I hold that one of the primary reasons that general relativity is not renormalizable with special relativity and quantum mechanics, in other words, one of the primary reasons that general relativity is not renormalizable with quantum electrodynamics is because we are in fact dealing with two very different eternities in special relativity and general relativity. In fact, in stark contrast to the multiverse and parallel universe claims by atheists, for which they have absolutely no evidence, the Christian theist, on the other hand, can appeal directly to the theories of special relativity and general relativity to support their belief in a higher heavenly dimension and in a hellish dimension. This following video gives us an overview of some of that evidence. Moreover, special relativity and general relativity, as far as entropy is concerned, reveal two very different qualities of eternity to us. In particular, the black holes of general relativity, as far as entropy is concerned, are found to be timeless singularities of destruction and disorder. Whereas conversely, special relativity is associated with the singularity of creation and order, associated with the extreme 1 and 10 to the 10 to the 123rd thermodynamic order that we see at the creation event of the Big Bang. In fact, black holes are found to be the largest contributor of the observable universe's entropy. Moreover, it is also important to note that entropy is the primary reason why our material bodies eventually grow old and die. The destructive power inherent in black holes is illustrated rather dramatically in the following quote by Kip Thorne. Needless to say, the implications of this eternity of death and destruction found at black holes should be fairly disturbing for those of us who are of, shall we say, a spiritually minded persuasion. Moreover, the plausibility of Christ reconciling general relativity with quantum mechanics and special relativity into the much sought after theory of everything becomes much more reasonable when we realize that, basically, death itself would need to be successfully dealt with in any true unification between the two theories. But it is one thing to claim that it is plausible for Jesus Christ united general relativity with quantum mechanics and special relativity into the much sought after theory of everything in his resurrection from the dead. But it is quite another thing to present actual evidence that he did do just that. Yet, I hold that in the Shroud of Turin, we do indeed find clear evidence that both gravity and quantum mechanics were dealt with in Christ's resurrection from the dead. Here are a few lines of evidence that make this point clear. In the following video, Isabel Picksick states, "The muscles of the body are absolutely not crushed against the stone of the tomb. They are perfect. It means the body is hovering between the two sides of this shroud." What does that mean? It means there is absolutely no gravity. The following article states that the bottom part of the cloth containing the dorsal image would have borne all the weight of the man's supine body. Yet the dorsal image is not encoded with a greater amount of intensity than the frontal image. Kevin Moran, who is an optical engineer who worked on the mysterious three-dimensional nature of the shroud image, states that the radiation that made the image acted perfectly parallel to gravity. There is no side image. It is not a continuum or a spherical front radiation that made the image, as visible light or UV light. It is not the X-ray radiation that obeys the 1/r squared law that we are so accustomed to in medicine. It is more unique. This suggests a quantum event where a finite amount of energy transferred abruptly. The fact that there are images front and back suggests that the radiating particles were released along the gravity vector. And in the following paper, the researchers found that it was not possible to describe the image formation on the shroud in classical terms, but they found it necessary to describe the formation of the image on the shroud in discrete quantum terms. And to further drive this point home, the following study concluded that it would take 34,000 billion watts of BUV radiation to make the image on the shroud. And to add further plausibility of Christ reconciling general relativity with quantum mechanics and special relativity into the much sought after theory of everything, it is also important to note that it is now found that humans naturally emit what is termed to be non-classical biophotons, which have quantum properties. And here's an actual picture of a human emitting these quote-unquote quantum biophotons. Moreover, as the following video demonstrates, advances in quantum biology now also provide us with fairly compelling evidence that we do indeed have a transcendent component to our material bodies that is not reducible to the material particles of our body. In other words, advances in quantum biology provide us with fairly strong evidence for a quote-unquote quantum soul that is capable of living past the death of our material bodies. Thus, in conclusion, if we rightly let the agent causality of God back into the picture of modern physics, as the Christian founders of modern science had it originally envisioned, Sir Isaac Newton, James Clerk Maxwell, Michael Faraday, and Max Planck, to name a few, as these following quotes make clear. If we rightly let the agent causality of God back into the picture of modern physics, then an empirically backed reconciliation between quantum mechanics and general relativity into the theory of everything readily pops out for us in Christ's resurrection from the dead. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. And again, I remind that all papers and videos referenced in this video may be accessed in the paper that is linked in the video description.